It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind where the grandkids ran circles around the picnic table and the smell of ribs carried clear across the yard. I was manning the grill like always, same old baseball cap, same old apron that said Grandpa's Kitchen in faded letters. Then my son David decided to clear his throat. Loud, like he was about to give a speech at City Hall. "Dad," he said, hands in his pockets. "We need to talk about the living situation." My brother Ray was mid-sip of his beer. My sister June had a forkful of potato salad halfway to her mouth. Everyone turned to look. $3,200 a month, David said, real steady. "That's what rent costs now. You pay it, or you move out. Your choice, Dad." The whole place went quiet. You could hear the meat sizzling on the grill. Ray set down his drink slow, like he was afraid it might shatter. June's fork clattered against her plate. David stood there, chest out like he'd just delivered the Gettysburg Address. His friend Steve, sitting at the far table, had this little smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. I flipped a burger and nodded, calm as Sunday morning. But none of them knew the quiet nod wasn't surrender. It was the start of something they'd never see coming. After dinner, I was taking out the trash when I heard voices by the garage. David and Steve, thinking they were alone. "Man, you actually did it," Steve was saying. "Can't believe you pulled that off in front of everyone." "Told you it would work," David replied. "Old people are weak. Embarrass them in front of family. They'll pay anything to save face." "Your old man looked ready to write the check right there," Steve laughed. $3,000 a month for his own house. "That's cold, bro. He'll pay. Trust me. He's got that land up north, his pension, Social Security. He's sitting on money he doesn't even use. Still, your own dad." "Business is business," David said. "Besides, he's getting old. Better I manage things than some stranger, right?" I stood there holding the garbage bag, feeling something twist in my chest. Not just hurt, something deeper. After everything I'd done, 2 jobs for 15 years, skipped meals so he could have new cleats for football, worked weekends laying concrete so he could go to college without loans. And he thought I was weak. I walked back inside, washed my hands real careful, and wrote down every word I'd heard in the notebook I kept by the phone. Steve had no idea the man he mocked was about to write the ending to his own story. That night, I couldn't sleep. Sat at my kitchen table with all the bills spread out like a roadmap of my life. Electric bill, water bill, the receipt from fixing the roof last spring. This house held 40 years of memories, and my son wanted to charge me rent for it. I built these walls myself back in '83. Laid every piece of flooring. Installed the windows with my buddy Frank, who'd been dead now 10 years. The bathroom tiles still had my thumbprint in the corner where I'd smoothed the grout. Margaret and I had brought David home from the hospital to this house. His height marks were still penciled on the doorframe of the hall closet. First day of school pictures on these porch steps. Taught him to ride a bike in this driveway. Now he wanted $3,200 to let me keep living in my own memories. I walked through each room, running my hand along the walls. In David's old bedroom, his basketball trophies still sat on the shelf. I'd driven him to every practice, every game. Cheered myself hoarse when he made varsity. The refrigerator hummed in the darkness. Same fridge from 1997. Still working fine, unlike the loyalty I'd raised. I made myself a promise right there in the dark. This wasn't over. And that vow would soon cost David everything he thought he controlled. Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from David. "Dad, just following up on our conversation. Rent is due on the 1st. I'll need first month plus security deposit. That's $6,400 total." I stared at the message. Security deposit. For the house I built with my bare hands. Another text. Also, some new rules. No more than 2 overnight guests per month. Quiet hours after 9 p.m. Yard maintenance is tenant responsibility. Tenant. That's what I was now. A tenant in my own life. I typed back. Understood. When do you need the money? By the 30th would be great. I can help you set up automatic payments if that's easier. Automatic payments. Like I was subscribing to some service instead of paying my son extortion money. That would be helpful, I replied. My arthritis makes it hard to write checks. Playing the weak old man. Let him think he had me figured out. No problem, Dad. I'll bring the paperwork by Thursday. Thursday came. David walked in with a folder thick as a phone book. Lease agreements, rules and regulations, maintenance responsibilities. He prepared for this. Probably had Steve help him download templates online. I signed every page slowly, asking questions about terms I understood perfectly well. David explained each one like he was talking to a child, because nothing blinds a man faster than the belief he's already won. Saturday, I ran into my old friend Harvey at the hardware store. We'd worked construction together back in the day. He was buying paint for his garage. "Bobby," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "How's retirement treating you?" "Can't complain," I said, though I could have written a book of complaints. We grabbed coffee at the diner next door. Harvey stirred sugar into his cup and shook his head. "You hear about the Riverside Apartments?" "What about them?" "Owners looking to sell. Whole building. 12 units. Parking garage. The works." I set down my coffee careful. "That's so. Getting too old to deal with tenants, he says. Wants to move to Phoenix, be closer to his grandkids." The Riverside Apartments. The building where David lived. Where I lived. Where half the neighborhood lived. "How much he asking?" Harvey shrugged. "Haven't heard a number, but he's motivated. You know anybody looking to get into real estate?" I added cream to my coffee, watching it swirl. "Might know someone." "Well, tell them to move fast. Market's hot right now." We talked about other things, his bad knee, the new grocery store going up on 5th Street. But my mind was elsewhere, putting pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle. And that seed was about to grow into the storm heading straight for David. Monday morning, I called the number Harvey had given me. The building owner, Mr. Novak, sounded tired on the phone. "Yes, I'm selling," he said. "You interested?" "Might be. Could we meet?" We set up a meeting at his office Wednesday afternoon. I wore my good jacket, the one from Margaret's funeral. Wanted to look serious. Mr. Novak's office smelled like cigarettes and old coffee. He had boxes stacked everywhere, already packing up 30 years of property management. "I'm asking $450, he said straight out. "Building's in good shape. New boiler last year. Roof's got another decade in it. $450,000. I had the land up north, worth about $300,000. My savings could cover most of the rest." "$450's steep," I said, though it wasn't really. 12 units at $800 to $1,200 each. You do the math. Building pays for itself. "How soon you looking to close?" "Soon as possible. Wife's already in Phoenix. I'm living out of boxes here." We talked numbers, timelines, tenants. He didn't mention David specifically, just ran down the list of who paid on time and who didn't. David, apparently, was sometimes late, but always paid eventually. "I might be interested," I said finally. "Let me run some numbers." By the time anyone found out, the papers would already be signed. The next Sunday dinner, I showed up with my checkbook visible in my shirt pocket. Made sure David saw it when I hugged him hello. "Hey Dad," he said, eyeing the checkbook. "Everything okay?" "Oh sure. Just trying to figure out this rent situation. Never had to budget for it before." We sat down to eat. David's wife Nancy had made her dry chicken again. Steve was there, of course, practically living at David's table these days. "So Dad," David said, cutting his meat. "You figure out the payment schedule?" "Still working on it," I said, pulling out the checkbook like I was really studying it. 3,200 is, well, it's substantial. Might need to look at smaller places. Steve actually laughed. "Smaller? That house is huge for one person anyway." "It's got memories," I said quietly. "Memories don't pay bills," David said. Then, catching Nancy's look, he added, "But we can work something out, Dad. Family discount, maybe." "Family discount?" I perked up like a grateful dog. "That would help. How about 3,000 even?" David offered, magnanimous as a king. $200 discount. My own son, offering me a discount on my own house. "That's very generous," I said. They laughed at a man holding keys neither of them knew existed yet. That Monday, I drove up to look at the land I own north of the city. 40 acres of pine and meadow, bought back in '92 when land was cheap and dreams were cheaper. Margaret and I were going to build a cabin there. Never got around to it. Then she got sick, and cabins didn't matter anymore. A developer had been calling me for 3 years about buying it. Last offer was $320,000. I'd always said no, holding on to Margaret's dream. But Margaret would understand. She always understood the practical things. I called him from the property line, looking out at the mountains. "That offer still good, Mr. Thompson?" "Absolutely. 320, cash." "Make it 330, and we close this week." "Done. I'll have the lawyers draw it up." Wednesday, I sat in a bank office with more money than I'd ever seen in my account. The banker, a young woman with kind eyes, asked if I wanted to discuss investment options. Actually, I said, I need a cashier's check. $412,000. She didn't even blink. Of course, Mr. Thompson. May I ask what for? Real estate investment, I said. She smiled. Smart. Market's strong right now. If only she knew how strong I was about to make it. The money would move faster than David's ego could keep up with. 2 weeks passed. David threw another Sunday gathering, this time making it a bigger production. Invited the cousins, some neighbors, even his boss from work. Halfway through dinner, after a few beers, he started his show. So get this, he announced to the table. Dad's finally downsizing, looking at apartments and everything. That's so? Asked cousin Marie. Yeah, the house is getting to be too much for him. All that maintenance, you know? He can barely handle the yard work anymore. I was sitting right there, spooning mashed potatoes onto my plate. Where you looking, Uncle Bobby? Marie asked me. Oh, here and there, I said. Steve jumped in. There's some nice senior communities on the south side. Very affordable. Senior communities. Like I was ready for bingo and supervised medications. Dad's being smart about it, David continued. Knows when it's time to step aside and let the younger generation take over. Right, Dad? Right? I said, buttering my roll. Nancy patted my hand. It's nothing to be ashamed of, Bobby. Getting older happens to everyone. If they're lucky, I said. Everyone laughed like I'd made a joke. David raised his beer. To Dad, finally accepting reality. They all raised their glasses. I raised mine too. It would be the last time David ever laughed about that house. Thursday morning, I met Mr. Novak at his lawyer's office. The conference room had a view of the river and smelled like leather and success. $412,000, Mr. Novak said, looking at the cashier's check. Fair price. The lawyer, a thin man with careful hands, walked us through every document. Transfer of ownership, tenant agreements, maintenance records, financial statements. My name replacing Novak's on every line. The tenants don't need to be notified immediately, the lawyer explained. You have 30 days to send official notice of ownership change. 30 days. I could wait 30 days. What about evictions? I asked, casual as asking about the weather. Standard process. 30-day notice for month-to-month tenants, unless there's cause. Then it can be immediate. And I can choose not to renew leases. Your building, your choice. Long as you follow the law. Mr. Novak signed his last signature with something like relief. She's all yours, he said, sliding the keys across the table. 12 units, 12 headaches. Good luck. I picked up the keys, feeling their weight. One of these opened David's door. One opened mine. The rest opened doors to neighbors who had no idea their world just shifted. Thank you, I said, shaking his hand. And David wouldn't see it coming until it was far too late to run. That night, I walked through the building with my new keys. The hallways were quiet, most folks settling in for the evening. I could hear TVs through thin walls, someone cooking with too much garlic, a baby crying on the third floor. I stopped outside David's door. Unit 8B. Could hear him and Nancy inside. Sounded like they were watching the game. Steve's voice too, because Steve was always there, feeding off David's table like a parasite. I put my hand on the door, feeling the cheap wood. David had complained about wanting to upgrade to a better apartment, but he spent his money on toys instead. New truck, new TV, new everything except a new conscience. The keys hung heavy in my pocket. I could walk in right now, tell him everything. Watch his face crumble like old brick. But not yet. The harvest wasn't ready. I continued my walk, checking the laundry room, the parking garage, the emergency exits. My building now. Every brick, every board, every lease. In the basement, I found the maintenance records. David had complained about a leaky faucet 3 times last year. Novak had fixed it each time, patient as a saint. I wondered how patient I'd be. The furnace hummed steady in the corner, the heart of the building keeping everyone warm. I'd be responsible for that now. For keeping the lights on, the water running, the heat flowing. The next time he stood at this door, it wouldn't be in silence. Friday afternoon, David called me while I was sorting through rental agreements in my kitchen. Dad, great news. Steve knows a guy who's looking for a property manager. Part-time work, easy money. Perfect for you. Property manager? I kept my voice interested. Yeah, for some apartments on the east side. You just collect rent, handle minor complaints. Steve says his friend would give you a break on training since you're my dad. The irony was so thick I could have spread it on toast. My son, trying to get me a job managing someone else's apartments while living in the building I now owned. That's thoughtful, I said. Well, you'll need income if you're moving to a smaller place. Social Security won't cover everything. You're probably right. Steve says the guy might even give you a discount on one of the units. Kill two birds, you know. In the background, I heard Steve say something, and they both laughed. Anyway, David continued. He's raising rent across the board next year. Market rates, he says. Probably going up to $4,000 for units like yours. Like mine. Supply and demand. For $1,000, I repeated. Crazy, right? But that's the market. Good thing we locked you in at $3,000. Next year, he wouldn't even make it past next month. Another Sunday came around. I'd been owning the building for a week, and nobody knew except me and my lawyer. The family gathered in my backyard this time. I wanted home field advantage. Spent all morning preparing. Ribs rubbed with my secret spice blend, corn on the cob, Margaret's potato salad recipe that Nancy could never quite copy. David showed up late, as usual. Steve right behind him like a shadow. They'd been golfing, spending money David should have been saving. Smells good, Dad, David said, not offering to help. Ray was already there, had been since 10 helping me set up tables. He kept giving David looks, but said nothing. Ray knew something was off, but couldn't place it. Bobby, you seem different, my sister June said, squeezing my shoulder. You look relaxed. Just enjoying the day, I said. And I was. The last day of pretending. The last day of being weak old Bobby who needed his son's permission to exist. We ate. We talked. Kids played in the sprinkler. Normal Sunday stuff. David held court at the main table, telling stories about deals at work, promises he was making, people he was impressing. Steve hung on every word like David was dispensing gospel. He didn't know the script was about to flip on him. Hard. Halfway through the meal, when everyone was loose with food and sun, I stood up and tapped my beer bottle with a fork. Got something to share? I said. The conversations died down. David looked annoyed at the interruption. As you all know, David's been concerned about my living situation. Worried about me managing the house and all. David nodded, putting on his concerned son face. Just want what's best for you, Dad. I know. That's why I took action. You found an apartment? Nancy asked. Better. I bought the Riverside Apartments building. Fork stopped moving. Ray set down his beer real slow. June's eyes went wide. What? David's voice cracked like a teenager's. The whole building. 12 units. Closed the deal this week. You're joking. But David's face was already changing color. No joke. I'm your landlord now. The silence stretched out like taffy. A kid splashed in the sprinkler, unaware the adult world had just tilted off its axis. Steve stood up. I should probably. Sit down, Steve, I said, not asking. He sat. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish gulping air. But the best part wasn't the ownership. It was what came next. David forced a laugh. It came out strangled. Good one, Dad. You really had me there. Not joking, son. I pulled out the paperwork from the folder I'd kept under my chair. Spread it on the table like playing cards. Deed transfer, ownership certificate, the works. David grabbed the papers, scanning them fast. His hands started shaking. This is... How did you? Sold the North property, I said calm. Good price, too. The land Mom loved? Nancy gasped. Margaret would understand. She always said family comes first. Just not the way you think. Steve was backing away from the table, step by tiny step, like he could escape being associated with this disaster. You can't do this, David said. That's my apartment. My apartment, I corrected. You're month to month, according to the lease. Ray started log. I reached into my shirt pocket, pulled out an envelope with David's name written on it in my steady hand. Here, I said, holding it out. David took it like it might bite. His fingers fumbled with the seal. The paper inside was official, legal, final. 30 days, I said as he read. Standard eviction notice. Nothing personal. The color drained from his face like someone pulled a plug. You're evicting me? Renovating that unit. Needs work. Where am I supposed to go? Plenty of apartments in the city. Market rate's about $3,200, I hear. Nancy grabbed the paper. This can't be legal. Very legal. Had a lawyer check everything twice. Steve was at the gate now, trying to slip out unnoticed. Steve, I called out. Your friend still hiring for that property manager job? He froze. Maybe David could apply. He seems to know a lot about taking advantage of family. David stood up so fast his chair tipped over. You planned this. You sat there while you called me weak. While you plotted to squeeze money from your old man. Yes, I sat there. 30 days, David repeated, like saying it might change it. But the humiliation? That was just getting started. The neighbors started noticing the commotion. Mrs. Chun from next door peeked over the fence. Tom from across the street stopped washing his car to watch. Everything okay, Bobby? Mrs. Chun called out. Just fine, I called back. Family meeting about David's living situation. David's face went redder. The whole neighborhood would know by sunset. Mrs. Chun was better than the evening news for spreading information. Dad, please, David said, lowering his voice. Can we discuss this privately? Like when you demanded rent in front of everyone. That kind of private. Ray stood up, walked over to David. You really charged your father rent for his own house. It's complicated, David muttered. No, June said, standing too. It's simple. You got greedy and karma just kicked your teeth in. The cousins were whispering among themselves. Nancy was on her phone, probably looking up tenant rights. The kids had stopped playing, sensing the adult tension. This is cruel, Nancy said finally. Cruel is charging your father rent after he worked his whole life to give you everything, June shot back. More neighbors gathered at fence lines, pretending to garden while obviously listening. David looked around at all the watching eyes, the judgment, the absolute destruction of his reputation happening in real time. And someone had recorded the whole thing on their phone. Steve made it to the gate, but Cousin Marie's teenage daughter had her phone out, live streaming to who knows where. Is that Steve? She said loud enough for the phone to catch. The one who said old people are weak. Steve tried to cover his face, practically running to his car. Steve, wait. David called out, but Steve was already starting his engine. Some friend, Ray commented. Rats and ships, you know. David turned back to me, desperate now. Dad, I'm your son. Your only son. And I'm your father. The one you thought was too weak to fight back. I didn't mean. You meant every word. I heard you and Steve laughing about it. Business is business, right? The neighbors weren't even pretending not to watch anymore. Tom had actually pulled up a lawn chair. Please, David tried again. Where's Nancy and I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. You're really going to make us homeless? I'm giving you 30 days notice. Same as any tenant. More than you gave me before demanding rent. Nancy stood up, mascara running. We'll fight this. Go ahead. Waste money on lawyers. See how far it gets you. Because everyone knew this story would be all over town by morning. That night, around 10, I heard a knock. Soft, almost apologetic. David stood at my door alone. His eyes were red, shoulders slumped. Can I come in? I stepped aside. He walked to the living room, sat in his mother's old chair. I noticed he was careful with it, like he finally remembered it meant something. I messed up, he said to the floor. I didn't respond, just waited. Steve kept saying you were sitting on money. Said you didn't need that big house. Said it was smart business. And you listened. I got caught up in it. The money, the control. Nancy wanted a vacation to Cancun. Steve said if you were paying rent, we could afford it. With my money. Yeah. His voice cracked. With your money. He looked up finally. I remember when you built this house. You and Uncle Frank, sweating through that summer. Mom bringing you lemonade every hour. Good lemonade, I said. The best. He almost smiled, then caught himself. I remember you teaching me to hammer nails in the garage. Said every man should know how to build something. You built something all right. Built a wall between us. Can you forgive me? I sat down across from him, in my own chair. But Grandpa's silence said more than any words could. David waited in that silence for what felt like hours, but was probably minutes. Finally, I spoke. You know what hurt most? Not the money. Not the embarrassment. It was that you thought I was weak. I don't think that. You said it. To Steve. Old people are weak. David flinched. That was just talk. Talk shows what's in your heart, son. He rubbed his face with both hands. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? I am. That I was wrong. I want you to understand something, I said, leaning forward. This isn't about punishment. It's about consequences. Consequences? You made a business decision. So did I. But we're family. We were family when you demanded rent. We were family when you tried to humiliate me. Funny how family only matters when you need it. David stood up, pacing now. So that's it. 30 days, and we're on the street. 30 days to find a new place. Same notice any landlord gives. You're not any landlord. You're my father. And you're not any tenant. You're the son who forgot that. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. Mom would be disappointed in both of us. Maybe, but she would have understood why I had to do this. And David knew there would be no bargaining his way out of this one. The next Sunday, no one gathered for dinner. The family was split down the middle. June called me that morning. Bobby, some folks are saying you went too far. Which folks? Nancy's sister mainly. Says you're destroying your own family. David destroyed it when he put a price tag on my head. Ray called an hour later. Stand firm, brother. Kid needed this lesson 20 years ago. Marie texted, Team Bobby all the way. But cousin Frank texted, this is harsh, even for David. The family group chat exploded. Everyone had opinions. Everyone picked sides. Nancy's mother called me directly. You're really going to evict your own son? He's really going to charge his father rent. That's different. How? She hung up. David posted on Facebook about family betrayal and elderly parents becoming vindictive. Nancy shared articles about elder abuse going both ways. But for every person who sided with them, 2 more shared the video from Marie's daughter. The moment David's face fell when I announced I owned the building was already at 10,000 views. The comments were brutal. Kid got what he deserved. Imagine charging your dad rent. Steve ran like the coward he is. The clock had officially started ticking for David's exit. 2 weeks left on the notice. I saw David loading boxes into his truck. He moved slow, deliberate, like each box weighed more than it should. Nancy carried out garbage bags of clothes. No more designer boxes for their designer life. You need help? I called from my window. David looked up. For a second, I thought he might say yes. Bridge something between us. We're fine, he said, turning away. They made 12 trips that day. Each time David passed my window, he looked older. The cockiness was gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen before. Humility, maybe, or just defeat. Mrs. Chun watched from her garden. Your boy finally moving? Seems so. About time he learned respect, she said, going back to her tomatoes. Tom from across the street offered his truck for larger items. David accepted, quiet and grateful. The whole neighborhood knew the story now. Some felt sorry for him. Most didn't. That evening, I walked past Unit 8B. The door was open, boxes stacked in the hallway. The apartment already looked smaller without their stuff. David came out carrying a lamp. We stood there, father and son, 3 feet and 30 years apart. The deposit, he said. Will I get it back? If the apartment's clean. And the neighbors watched every single trip to his car. Moving day, October 1st, crisp morning, leaves starting to turn. David's truck was loaded, Nancy's car too. They'd found an apartment on the south side, smaller, more expensive. Market rate. I stood on my porch with my coffee, watching like I was seeing off travelers. David walked over, keys in his hand. Here. I took them, felt their weight. Same keys I'd given him 5 years ago when he moved in. Full circle. Where you headed? I asked. Riverside Complex. Ironic, right? Bit. Nancy walked past without looking at me. She'd aged 5 years in 5 weeks. Take care of yourself, Dad, David said. You too, son. He started to walk away, stopped, turned back. For what it's worth, you taught me something. Yeah. Don't mistake kindness for weakness. That's a good lesson. Expensive one. The best ones usually are. He got in his truck, started the engine. I watched them drive away, David's shoulders square for the first time in weeks. Maybe there was hope. Maybe not. Tom would tell. The street was quiet after they left. Peaceful. It was the quietest victory Grandpa had ever tasted. 3 weeks later, another Sunday dinner. My backyard, my ribs, my rules. Ray brought beer. June brought her potato salad. Marie and the cousins came. Even Nancy's sister showed up, curious more than supportive. You did what you had to do, she admitted, helping herself to corn. Never thought I'd have to. David's working 2 jobs now, she said. Nancy too. Good for them. You miss him? Every day. And it was true. You can love someone and still refuse to be their victim. You can be a father without being a fool. He'll come around, Ray said, flipping burgers I'd let him manage. Give it time. Maybe. No maybe about it. You're his father. That doesn't change. The grandkids played in the same sprinkler. The sun hit the yard the same way. But the energy was different. Lighter. No one was performing, No one was scheming. Just family being family. Steve still around? Someone asked. Haven't seen him since that day, June laughed. Probably 3 towns over by now. We ate. We talked. We existed without the shadow of manipulation. It felt like breathing clean air after years of smoke. But everyone knew the story by heart now. The rise and the fall. The sun was setting, casting gold light through the trees Margaret and I had planted 20 years ago. I sat in my chair, the one I'd built myself from oak and determination, watching my family, the ones who stayed, clean up plates and pack leftovers. Ray raised his beer. To Bobby, who proved you're never too old to stand your ground. They raised their glasses. I raised mine, filled with lemonade I'd made from Margaret's recipe. You know what Steve said? I asked the group. Old people are weak. June snorted. How'd that work out for him? Not great, Ray laughed. I took a long sip of lemonade, felt the tartness on my tongue, the sweetness after. You know what I learned through all this? What's that? Marie asked. Weakness isn't about age. It's about letting people treat you less than you're worth. Amen, someone said. David thought I was weak because I was generous. Because I gave. Because I loved without conditions. That's not weakness, June said softly. No, it's not. But letting someone use that love against you? That's weakness. And I'm done being weak. I stood up, looked at each face around my table. My real family. The ones who knew my worth wasn't measured in dollars or deeds. Old people are weak, huh? I said, raising my glass one more time. Not today. And somewhere across town, David heard those words replay in his head.